And thank you for joining us for another live edition of All the Angles. Public opinion about issues on policy, regulation of commerce, and taxes are just a few of the areas that can foretell the possible outcome of the 2012 presidential election. National polls and the brain trust behind them are intended to give us the best possible estimate of whom the next leader of the United States will be. TI Now is very excited to cover its first U.S. presidential election for the telecom industry, and here to give us some answers as to what we all want to know is Andrew Baumann, Vice President at Greenberg Quinlan Rosner Research. That's one of the world's leading research and strategic consulting firms. Also on the program is Dilip Shurhari, Head of Legislative and Government Affairs for TIA. And gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that. Thank you for being here, Andrew. I know you're a busy guy, but we appreciate you, especially at this time of the year and in this fourth year of Obama's term, to be here and give us kind of a prospectus and foretelling, if you will, of what we can expect in the next week.
Happy to do it.
So let's start with this. Public sentiment over the last 10 years has come down quite a bit. That for institutions, businesses, and government agencies. We have some numbers of a Gallup poll that was recently done. Let me go through these, and I'm going to get back to you, Andrew, in just a moment. Trust in government institutions over the past 10 years. Let's start with the presidency. That's currently at 37%. That's down 23% from 10 years ago. Trust in Congress, this is no surprise, by the way, at 13%. That's down 17% from 10 years ago again. And trust in the Supreme Court at 37%. That's also down at 13%. And trust in banks, again, no surprise here, at 21%. That's down 24% over the last 10 years. Trust in big business versus small business. Trust in big business at 21%. And trust in small businesses, and we'll get to this a little bit later, by the way, at 63%. Andrew, let's start with you. Why these numbers? Why are we seeing these numbers right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's a combination of things, but basically the first decade of the 21st century was not a very good one for the general public. You know, in terms of up until the financial crisis, it was a lot of gridlock, a lot of partisan bickering, et cetera, and just generally a middle class that wasn't getting ahead while they saw sort of those at the top doing better and better. And then, of course, you had you know, one of the greatest financial and economic crisis since the Great Depression. And what you've seen is across the board, trust in almost every institution that we look at, that Gallup looks at, has declined by double digits since the early 2000s. I mean, people were optimistic in 2000. We had a budget surplus. The things seemed to be going well. It was before 9/11. You know, and then, you know, the sentiment really took a turn for the worse. But especially you see government really trust in government really going down, especially Congress. You know, nobody likes Congress, but the trust in Congress is now down to 17%, which is an all-time low. The presidency has more standing still, and this is not about a single president but the office, but still at only 37%. It was in the 60s in 2000. But also the Supreme Court, which you would think would be sort of immune to these kind of things. I think because some of the more polarizing political decisions that has become now a more viewed as a more partisan institution than a nonpartisan institution. That's gone down as well. But you also see the banks, obviously, with the financial crisis, viewed very poorly. That's gone down. Organized labor, HMOs, TV and newspapers are no longer trusted as well. Basically, the only three institutions in the Gallup poll that are still, you know, trusted by a majority of the population are small businesses, the military, and the police, and also actually the churches and religious institutions. Everybody else has really taken a beating, and you know, it's just because we have a generally pessimistic public, and I think they have, you know, they have a lot of reason to be pessimistic. The government hasn't worked for the last 10 years. Businesses have you know, as we saw in 2008, you know, and before, have had a lot of excesses, and the public has gotten hurt by it, and it's going to take some time for those institutions to rebuild that trust.